The moment everything changes is the moment you truly stop trying. Not because you're acting distant, not because you're using silence to make them react, but because, deep inside, you've reached a place where you're no longer chasing them emotionally. An avoidant feels that change almost immediately. If you've ever cared deeply for someone with dismissive or fearful avoidant patterns, you've probably lived through the same exhausting cycle. You reach out and they withdraw. You express your feelings and they shut themselves off. The more effort you put into the relationship, the less they seem to give back. You keep investing emotionally while they protect themselves with distance, logic, and an appearance of calm that hides what they're really feeling. That cycle can continue for months or even years. Then one day, something changes inside you. Maybe your heart gets tired. Maybe you finally see the situation clearly. Whatever causes it, your energy is no longer the same. You stop feeling the need to explain yourself. You stop defending the relationship every time it struggles. You stop hoping they'll suddenly become emotionally available. Instead, you quietly let go. You begin to detach. The instant an avoidant senses that your emotions are no longer revolving around them, something shifts inside them too. When they realize your heart is no longer waiting on their mixed signals or unpredictable behavior, it shakes them in a way they didn't expect. The control they've always counted on suddenly doesn't feel so secure anymore. For many avoidants, emotional distance feels safe. Keeping space between themselves and others helps them avoid vulnerability. Staying detached gives them a sense of protection, and although they may never admit it, having someone constantly pursuing them can quietly reinforce their feeling of control. As long as you're the one reaching out, they rarely have to question where they stand. As long as you're chasing, they know they don't have to take emotional risks. When you keep filling every emotional gap they leave behind, they become comfortable relying on that pattern without realizing how dependent they've become on it. But everything changes when that familiar pattern disappears. Your long emotional messages become silence. Your anxious reactions are replaced by quiet confidence. The longing they once sensed from you fades into peaceful acceptance. That difference doesn't go unnoticed. They recognize it almost immediately. The first feeling that often surfaces isn't heartbreak, it's surprise. This isn't how they expected the story to unfold. Many avoidants carry a deep belief that closeness eventually becomes overwhelming, that emotional intimacy leads to pressure, or that love will eventually take away their freedom. At the same time, they've often grown used to your steady presence. They became accustomed to your reassurance, your attention, and the comfort of knowing someone wanted them without expecting them to be fully emotionally exposed. When you step away emotionally, that entire emotional balance is disrupted. Suddenly, something that always felt predictable becomes uncertain. Their first response is usually curiosity. Avoidants don't typically process emotions immediately. Instead of rushing toward their feelings, they often begin by observing. They notice that something feels different. They wonder why you aren't reacting the way you always did. They ask themselves why you're suddenly so quiet, why you don't seem upset, why you appear to be moving forward without them. That curiosity may lead them to test the connection in small, subtle ways. They might send a simple message, share a funny meme, text, "Hey," late at night, check in for no obvious reason, or casually reach out as if nothing has changed. These small gestures aren't always about starting the relationship again. Often, they're trying to understand whether they still have the same emotional impact on you. Your silence doesn't automatically convince them that you're angry. Instead, it makes them question something they rarely had to question before. It makes them wonder whether they're slowly losing their place in your emotional world. And for someone who quietly relied on your consistent attention while keeping their own walls up, that realization can be deeply unsettling. It forces them to face a possibility they never seriously considered, that the person who was always there may finally be gone, not because of a game, but because they've genuinely found the strength to let go. For an avoidant, that realization can be deeply unsettling. Then another emotional wave begins to rise, the one they've spent most of their life trying to avoid. Once they truly recognize that your care is no longer there in the way it used to be, emotions they kept buried begin to surface. They're often caught off guard by feelings they don't know how to process. A confusing mix of loss, regret, uncertainty, and abandonment starts to build inside them, even if they never admit it out loud. Rather than speaking openly about what they're experiencing, those emotions usually appear in subtle ways. They may suddenly become nostalgic, bringing up memories you shared together. They might offer compliments they never used to give, send unexpected messages, or casually check in as though they're just being friendly. Sometimes they'll ask questions that quietly reveal they're wondering whether you've moved on with your life. Even frustration can start showing itself. But it's often not directed at you. It's directed at the uncomfortable emotions growing inside them, feelings they've never learned how to handle. The emotional distance they once relied on no longer feels as comforting as it used to. Your decision to detach forces them to face something they've spent years avoiding. Whether they realized it or not, they had grown more dependent on your presence than they ever admitted. Your consistency became part of their emotional stability, even while they kept you at arm's length. As that truth settles in, the walls they built to protect themselves begin to feel different. What once felt like safety now starts to resemble loneliness. The distance that gave them comfort suddenly reminds them of everything they stand to lose. Your freedom becomes the very thing that triggers them. Avoidants pay attention to emotional changes far more than most people realize. They notice when your energy shifts. They see when you're no longer organizing your life around them. They recognize when you're focused on your own happiness instead of waiting for them to decide what they want. Watching you move forward peacefully affects them in ways they rarely show. Your quiet acceptance speaks louder than every emotional conversation you ever had. It says something words never could, that you've stopped revolving around them. For perhaps the first time, they see you standing on your own, emotionally free. And that freedom places them in front of a truth they've been trying to escape. If you really leave emotionally, they can no longer blame your emotions for the relationship's problems. They can't say you cared too much. They can't point to closeness or commitment as the reason things became difficult. Eventually, the only place left to look is within themselves. Of course, not every avoidant responds the same way. Some become anxious and suddenly reach out, trying to reconnect before it's too late. Others lower their defenses just enough to make awkward but genuine attempts at rebuilding the connection. Their efforts may not be smooth, but they're sincere. Some choose a different path. They act as though nothing has changed. They convince themselves, and everyone around them, that they don't care. They continue with life as if your absence means very little. But underneath that calm exterior, something has shifted. They think about what happened more often than they'd like to admit. Certain memories replay in their mind without invitation. They may quietly check your social media, wondering how you're doing, or whether someone else has taken the place they assumed would always be available to them. Some even rush into another relationship, not because they've fully healed or truly moved on, but because they're searching for something that distracts them from the uncomfortable emotions your absence has awakened. Keeping busy feels easier than sitting with the pain they've spent years avoiding. The irony is impossible to ignore. When you were constantly showing your love, they often struggled to recognize what they truly felt. But once you stepped back and genuinely detached, their own emotions became much harder to ignore. Your silence revealed more about their heart than your endless effort ever could. That's the difficult truth many people never realize. Sometimes it isn't your pursuit that uncovers an avoidance feelings. It's your willingness to stop chasing, accept reality, and reclaim your own emotional peace that finally forces them to see what was there all along. Sometimes an avoidant comes back, but not because they've suddenly become ready for love. Sometimes they return for a different reason. They want to know whether they still have an emotional hold over you. They want to see if you'll answer the way you always did, to reassure themselves they still matter, that they haven't been replaced, and that they can still influence your emotions. Other times their return is sincere. Losing your presence forces them to confront patterns they've ignored for years. Without your constant reassurance, they begin to recognize the habits that pushed people away. For the first time, they may genuinely want to approach relationships differently. But by then, something important has already changed. You're no longer sitting around hoping they'll figure it out. And that's where the real shift happens. Whether they come back with honest intentions, mixed signals, or complete silence, your confidence stays rooted. Your self-worth is no longer tied to their choices. You're no longer negotiating your emotional well-being with someone who instinctively pulls away from closeness. Instead, you've stepped into a place built on self-respect, clear thinking, and inner peace. This is what that turning point really means. Reaching the point where you stop caring doesn't mean you've become cold or bitter. It means you've become complete within yourself. You stop running after relationships that leave you confused. You stop asking someone for consistency when they're afraid of emotional closeness themselves. You stop measuring your value through another person's inability to connect. For the first time, you choose yourself without guilt. And that's the part many avoidants never expect. When you truly detach, you don't simply end the cycle, you reveal it. You begin to see just how much emotional effort you were carrying on your own. You recognize how often you were holding the relationship together while convincing yourself things would eventually change. Their silence no longer controls your emotions. Their distance no longer shakes your sense of security. Their inconsistency no longer feels like proof that you weren't enough. Instead, you begin to see the situation for what it really was. That clarity becomes your greatest strength. Once you see the pattern clearly, it's much harder to become trapped inside it again. You stop taking their behavior personally because you understand it reflects their unresolved fears more than your value. You no longer spend your days searching for hidden meanings behind delayed replies, emotional withdrawal, or mixed signals. You stop trying to earn love that should never have required constant effort in the first place. That is where real freedom begins. The moment an avoidant realizes you've genuinely stopped trying, they're left alone with the consequences of the emotional walls they've built over the years. They begin to experience the emptiness those walls created. They start to understand the price of always choosing distance over vulnerability. They're forced to face truths they've spent years avoiding. Some will learn from that experience. Some will continue running from it. But whichever path they choose is no longer your responsibility. You've already grown beyond the version of yourself that depended on their approval to feel worthy. You've stopped waiting for someone else's breakthrough before allowing yourself to heal. You've realized your future isn't meant to pause while someone else decides whether they're ready to love you. Your healing doesn't depend on whether they finally become emotionally available. Your peace isn't determined by whether they come back. Your value has never depended on who stayed, who left, or who failed to appreciate what you offered. Your life truly changed the moment you stopped searching for love in places that continually left you feeling uncertain and emotionally drained. It changed when you began choosing relationships built on mutual effort, mutual respect, and mutual emotional safety. That's the real transformation. That's the moment everything begins to shift.
And that's where your true power has been waiting all along. The greatest surprise isn't that an avoidant may finally notice your absence. The greatest surprise is that by the time they truly understand what they've lost, you are no longer the same person who once begged to be seen. You no longer wake up wondering why they haven't reached out. You no longer replay every conversation looking for hidden meanings. You stop measuring your value by how much attention someone gives you. Instead, your focus turns inward. You begin rebuilding the parts of yourself that were neglected while you spent so much energy trying to save a connection that only one person was carrying. That kind of healing is quiet. It doesn't need to be announced. It isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about finally feeling at peace with yourself. Ironically, this quiet confidence is often what makes an avoidant notice you even more. They remember the version of you who was always available, always explaining, always trying to fix every misunderstanding. Now they see someone who no longer needs to chase, convince, or seek constant reassurance. That difference is impossible to ignore. For many avoidants, this creates an internal conflict. Part of them wants to reach out because losing someone who truly cared is painful. Another part still fears the vulnerability required to build a healthy relationship. These two forces pull against each other, creating confusion they don't fully understand. This is why some avoidants come close, then disappear again. They may send a heartfelt message one day and become distant the next. They may express affection, then suddenly pull away when the relationship begins to feel emotionally real again. It isn't always because their feelings are fake. Often, it's because their fears remain stronger than the changes they've made. That's why their return should never be the only thing you're hoping for. Real change isn't measured by words, apologies, or emotional moments. It's measured by consistency. It's measured by someone showing up when things become uncomfortable instead of disappearing. It's measured by accountability instead of excuses. Healthy love doesn't leave you constantly questioning where you stand. If someone returns but continues repeating the same cycle, then nothing meaningful has changed. A second chance only has value when both people are creating something different from what existed before. The most powerful lesson in all of this is that you cannot heal another person's fear of intimacy through your own sacrifice. No amount of patience can replace someone's willingness to face themselves. No amount of love can do the inner work they must choose to do on their own. Your responsibility has never been to rescue someone from their emotional patterns. Your responsibility is to protect your own heart while remaining open to healthy love. When you finally understand that, something remarkable happens. You stop fearing endings. You stop seeing rejection as proof that you weren't enough. You stop believing every relationship has to be saved at any cost. Instead, you recognize that sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away from a pattern that keeps hurting both people. Because real love isn't built on chasing. It isn't built on emotional confusion. It isn't built on one person carrying all the weight while the other keeps retreating. Real love is built on two people choosing each other again and again, especially when vulnerability feels uncomfortable. If an avoidant reaches that place and truly commits to growing, then there may be a new chapter worth exploring. If they don't, your life still moves forward, because your future was never meant to depend on someone else's readiness. It was always meant to be shaped by your own courage to choose peace over uncertainty, self-respect over emotional exhaustion, and mutual love over one-sided effort.
That is the lesson that changes everything. The day you stop chasing isn't the day you lose love. It's the day you stop losing yourself. And once you find yourself again, no one has the power to make you forget your worth. From that moment on, every relationship you choose will be measured not by how intensely someone makes you feel, but by how safely, consistently, and genuinely they show up. That is the standard that protects your heart. That is the freedom that comes from healing. And that is the quiet strength that no amount of emotional distance can ever take away.